Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. It is fitting that I'm wearing a Detroit techno shirt here, respecting the Detroit techno lineage and reviewing a Kraftwerk album. This is their 1981 album, Computer World. This is original copy here. It's strange to see. This is I think 2014 reissue or something. Strange to see how it's hard to see, but you can see this one's a lot more green yellow than the regular yellow. I wonder why they didn't match the color very well on it. Strange. Um, but yeah, this was a really tough album to review in some respect. Not fully. I knew going into it it's a legendary album. It's I mean I don't know. I think the first time I heard some of these songs were probably when I was like 12 or 13, very early on when I was a kid, getting into some instrumental music and more into the techno side of music. Probably in the late '80s when I was again like 1988, '89. That's the great thing about Kraftwerk too, is like I think anybody growing up in those times was probably like they didn't know Kraftwerk, but you heard the Kraftwerk influence. I mean, there's a lot of hip hop artists, obviously, that sampled Kraftwerk, but they were used in commercials, and I mean, it's just you once you hear a Kraftwerk song, you just you know you just you never forget it, and if you do hear a song that sort of sounds in that vein, then you really think of Kraftwerk as well. So it's just their inspiration, their sound, and everything about them is more than timeless. It's inventive. It's legendary in so many ways, and I think the cool thing about it too is they weren't trying necessarily to be futuristic, but they came off as futuristic just because they're doing electronic music and maybe how they were performing it. But that was on a smaller. It was more about their sound and then maybe even more so their image than them playing live. Because obviously in America you wouldn't even have seen them live in the very early to middle '70s, even if they even toured in the '70s in America. At least the early to middle. They probably maybe in the later '70s toured America, but the it's cool because their kind of persona is writing songs about technology, right? So and almost everything every kind of object or something that uses technology, they sort of wrote a song about, right? If it's even if it's not mechanical, like if it's nuclear, right? If it's radioactivity, if it's or if it's a pocket calculator or computer, or just numbers is math, which is electronics in a way. So, or computer language, you could say. But so everything that they've done for the most part have been, there's a few songs here and there, like Models and stuff like that, where it wasn't necessarily about technology, but by the time this type was around, it was definitely it was obviously what the album is called, Computer World. So obviously the songs are going to be pretty much all about at least computers or just technology in general. But I mean, this is not only does that sound wise is revolutionary for the time, but I mean, home computer, like just the album cover is pointing out, is sort of identifying or really stamping that what's going on. Like it's funny to think like something that's so obvious that's going to change the world was put on the front of cover of an album. Like, it doesn't seem like it's a stretch, but now it's like you're like, wow, that's groundbreaking, because that was it's home computers. It's first home computers. First time of the home computers is 79, 80, around that time. So but it's interesting how Kraftwerk music is so simple, but it's so detailed and so much soul into the music. And that's the thing with electronic music, is as what a lot of people that don't like electronic music may think that it's very stale and very computer made, right? I mean, there was a time in the early '80s where where keyboard players didn't even get credit or songwriters didn't even get credit because people thought that the computers were making the music and it wasn't programmed. Like it was that silly and that naive to think that, oh, they're not even doing the music. That's a computer doing the music. Like, you know what I mean? They're still programming the music. They're just using the sound of it. So it was that naive. So for Kraftwerk to sort of, use the basics, there wasn't really going. It's just they put. What I'm trying to say is that they put the human touch into electronic music. Like, not only did they harness it in a lot of ways and make it more poppy, because you think back to the late '60s, right? It's very psychedelic. Moog synthesizers, switched on Bach, all that kind of stuff, Silver Apples, all the psychedelic, and then all the switched by Bach sort of was the first time they sort of tightened it into more poppy sounds, and Kraftwerk kind of was the one to really take that and run with that in a more straightforward theme. And I think the cool thing is when you look back at Kraftwerk's music, and it is very simple, but it is very the sounds are very unique and warm, and there's a lot of emotion in something that at the time was very electronic, but now it seems like there is a lot of human or organic sort of in that synthesized world, right? So it's strange to hear such basic music that has so much basic electronic music for the time sound like it has so much human element into it. And that's kind of the cool thing that resonates with me with Kraftwerk when I think of their importance. And I'm not even talking about the quality of their songs or anything like that. Or just the actual sound is what blows me away about this period of electronic music, and also Kraftwerk on the whole of them. It kind of has that timeless sound for me. And this was a really hard album to review in a lot of retrospect, because in a lot of ways, because it's hard to get these. I mean, I knew this album was legendary. I knew going into it. I've heard it so many times. I knew it was going to be a higher rating. But then I started looking at it, and I was like, there's only 7 songs. I always forget that it's only 7 songs. And then one of the songs is sort of repeated twice. There's a slight different version on Computer World. So really there's only 6 songs. And then when you think about it, numbers, and it's more fun to compute, they're different. Don't get me wrong. But, there's 7 songs on here, and there's really 6 on here that are unique. So it's like it's a mini album. So do I deduct points from it because the stars are going to be thrown off because it's only 7 stars to rate? That I try not to let that come into the equation, but you're not going to be seeing me out here reviewing maxi singles that have 5 songs on here that have 4 remixes, or 3, the original 3 remixes, and then a B-side, right? So, it's kind of very similar to like a mini album is very similar to some maxi singles. I have some maxi singles that have 8, 9 songs on it. So it's interesting. It's there's a lifetime of influence on this album. Like when you think about it, the influence of this album is so hard to be measured. It's a stone cold classic. This album. It's ironic how, like I was saying about the sounds, because the songs are so simple, but they're so classic, and there's so much human emotion in them, even though they're very, very basic. And that's because of the technology they were using at the time. If they had some keyboards now and it was very basic like this, it would almost sound it would be hard for it to sound inhuman. But since they're using such analog equipment in those days, it's not really electronic in some ways. It is, but it's almost not, because it's, it's that's kind of the difference between, the electricity and microchips. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that's the difference between the sounds and the equipment and stuff like that. Um, so it's just such a more warmth sound when you use analog equipment, and this is a perfect example. In some ways, they almost planted a microchip in music lovers' head, like like it's like this is probably the electronic album of all time in some ways. Um, I don't know. I can't think of what's more impactful than this album. Even if you looked at one of their other albums in actually it's up there, Autobahn. You know, I'm blanking on some other classic electronic albums because I'm a little tired today. But like it's hard to put something as high as this on strictly electronic music that's this classic. The themes are great on this album, and in general with Kraftwerk, and on this album there's no difference. Uh, this is why electronic music can be so great. In my opinion, how a 44-year album can still sound so futuristic and simple, and yet so simple and still sound futuristic. Like that's what's amazing about this album too. It's basic, but it's got some intricate rhythms on it, and some things you might not notice, even though it's very simple. That it takes some deeper thought to really understand the sort of subliminal rhythms that are kind of going on, that are sort of changing, and you may not notice it. And I think that's probably some of the precursor or first album that really made dance music intricate and a deeper listen, and made you sort of have a sort of a more focused or a discrete listening, where you can sort of listen to certain aspects of the song and sort of tune out other parts of the sound. Like it's deeper on that level, and there's some rhythm parts in this album that sort of do that, and so it's fairly intricate for the time. Again, the organic sounds in the machine are timeless. Like in here, it's not fully planned too. I mean, they're using the equipment of the time. I don't even think they knew that their music would sound this futuristic 44 years later, because their songs that they're doing are very basic. I mean, you think of like Pocket Calculator. It's a very basic song, but because of the equipment they're using, it still sounds futuristic. And that's the ironic thing. They're singing about a freaking pocket calculator being futuristic, right? It's just, I mean, it's just that's what's so cool and ironic about the whole thing. Um, some of my other thoughts on it. The influence on dance music is immense. The influence on hip hop, electro, and breakdancing is obviously well known, and it's even still understated. It's part of the fabric of the sound of electro. Kraftwerk's influenced. It's almost the fabric of techno is influenced right here. Detroit techno is influenced by this album. It's not ironic to think the next year is considered the first techno song of all time, is 1981, is the year after this album. It makes complete sense. It's a very highly sampled sound, is probably the most ongoing importance and impact of the album. As far as them performing stuff like them sort of becoming robots around this time, with Man Machine and stuff like that right before this, becoming robots as a performers kind of even made it better. It was kind of them sort of embracing what was thought of as not making music. So you're not really making music. The electronics are making music. You're just programming it. That's not the same as actually playing it. Well, they took it to the next level and sort of created them being robots and doing it. So they embraced that sort of, and I think that's really cool in a kind of a punk kind of rebellious way. Um, I think that's really important to notice about their whole um, persona is to know that they embraced it, and um, it wasn't shied upon. You know, again, you got to go back to the '70s, and a lot of people in rock music and stuff like that, and all the way through the '80s, especially here in America, were really down on people that made electronic music and keyboard players, and like they got a lot of slack from fans of other styles of music for not being real music. And to see somebody that was like Kraftwerk and embrace it, and then make little puppets and turn it into sort of persona and a visual appeal was amazing. Um, in a lot of ways, these original songs are very raw on this album, and these songs have been performed and evolved and improved in some ways, in so many ways, over so many years, that there are versions of these songs that I like better. Excuse me. I feel like I'm coming down with a cold. Um, yeah, there's different versions of so many of these songs, and live or elsewhere being like the 1991 The Mix compilation, which sort of updated the songs in many ways, and that was kind of very disappointing for a lot of hardcore Kraftwerk fans for them to redo those songs in kind of a new way. But that was one of the first Kraftwerk albums I had bought, was The Mix, and so I was 15 at the time, so I wasn't necessarily put off by how they were done. They were just different. And then I got to know the older ones as well at the same time, and I could kind of appreciate the both. But there are some, not specifically that album, but there are some updated versions of these songs that I like a little bit better, and some I don't like as much as the original songs. It's just they've done so many different variations of these songs over the years, live and stuff like that. I feel like almost if I could take ones from certain parts from certain ones that I would like better, that make certain sounds sound better on certain ones, that I would almost do that, and the songs would be even better. But I'm rating these original versions, and these versions are really raw. As far as the opportunities on the album, I don't know if I like the yellow color of the album. Like, I get it, Man Machine before it was red, and I'm blanking on the other name. I think one of the albums was sort of like a blue, but it's just yellow. I don't know why they chose yellow, but I can see how it stands out more than black or red. Well, red would stand out red, but they just had a red album. But I don't know if I mean, as timeless it is, if I'm questioning that it could be better, that it really must be better in my eyes. And I don't know what color that could be, but I don't know if black and white would have just been fine to do. Although then it wouldn't have been futuristic at all, so at least the yellow does. But I don't know if really yellow is really a futuristic color. It's like, I don't know. It's just it's not a natural. I mean, well, it is a natural color. I mean, there's leaves that are yellow, but I don't know if there would have been an opportunity for a better cover album. Again, there's only 7 songs on here. That is what it is. Computer World, first song, 4 stars. Pocket Calculator, 3.5 stars. Numbers, 4.25 stars. Computer World, 4 stars. Computer Love, as perfect. Multiple melodies, bass line, the percussion, the vocal. I think it's a groundbreaking topic too when you think of computer love. Like, that's, there's quite a few songs that talk about computer love through the course of the next generation of music producers, and computers feeling real, and all the way going to like sex robots and stuff like that now, or sex dolls and stuff like that now is pretty crazy. But I when you think of like computer love and stuff like that, like this was put into a song. Is this the first time? I'm sure it was the first time talked about like computer love, but I think putting it into a song is like groundbreaking for the time. But even regardless of that, the song is fantastic. It's 5 stars all day. Amazing song. What all-time classic. Home Computer, 4.25 stars. Again, it's like Computer World, or I'm sorry, Computer World. I got both of them both versions 4 stars. Home Computer I like a little bit better, 4.25 stars, and also it's more fun to compute, 4.25 stars. So it's an amazing album. When you think about it, man, the break dance. How many people have break danced to numbers and it's more fun to compute? Like this, and much just it's just like all time club tracks right there. But wow, you got one 5-star track, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 5 4-star tracks, and then 1 3-star tracks. It's just I don't know. 29.25 stars divided by 7 is a 4.17. Mind blowing. The first album that I've ever reviewed, I think, where it's a 4.17. I mean, if that was on my scale, that would probably be around a 93, 94. So that, considering it's seven songs, I did bring it down a couple points. It's a 91 out of 100. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a high rating, but I have to judge it for what it is. If there was 10 songs on there and 2 were crappy and I gave it an 85 or an 80, it would be is what it is, and I'd still want to tell you how important all the other songs were. But as it is, I have to rate what's there. And there are going to be some opportunities like this where there are 6 or 7 songs and it's sort of considered an album, and one of the songs sort of sounds like the other one, and how can I rate this high when it's just an electronic album? This is on my, even though I'm doing all these videos, this is on an electronic music scale of my same scale. So you can't really compare a rock album, a 91, to of a Kraftwerk album of this being 91. In my opinion, it's harder to make a rock album 91 than it is electronic music. In my opinion, and maybe that's because I know a lot more electronic albums than rock albums, and I don't know if they. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to explain that, but this rating is really on my electronic rating scale, which again is my same scale. But when I get down to rating stuff and I feel like I'm comparing stuff, I do kind of think about other albums, especially when it's this high, of what else I've scored a 90 or similar, and so I may take that into account, and I docked this one a couple points, but still a 91 out of 100. Excellent album, groundbreaking album, Stone Cold classic. Probably a top 500 Rolling Stone album of all time. It's just what can you say about the album? This album impacted. Just amazing album on so many levels. But just the music still, even if it wasn't all those things, I'd still give the music a 91. For 1981 sounding like this, was amazing. 43 years old, not 44. Alright, thanks so much for watching. Curious if you have a favorite Kraftwerk album. If you didn't notice, my channel logo is based on the Kraftwerk logo of the next album after this, which is Electric Cafe. I almost blank on my... That's when you know I'm tired, is when you blank on your own channel's name. Alright, I'm going to go take a nap. No, I'm just kidding. Have a good one.